welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always. So in this episode, we're going to talk about how self-abandonment creates resentment inside of our relationships. Self-abandonment is a brilliant self-protective strategy that many of us learned along the way in our lives, whether that was in our earliest childhood experiences or even in past relationships. In this experience, my nervous system is saying, in order for me to maintain the relational connection, in order for me to maintain safety, I have to disregard my own truth and my own needs in order to ensure the greater good, which is my survival. So I want us to be kind to ourselves if we notice that we self-abandon. This is something that many of us learned a very long time ago, and it got us to where we are now. Now, the thing about this is, it isn't an inherent way of being when we are in safety. Nature is a wonderful teacher of this. If we look at nature, everything is constantly in the ebb and flow of giving and receiving again and again and again, right? So if you look at a plant, it is taking from the sun, it is taking nutrients from the soil, it is taking from the rain that falls, and as a result, it blossoms. Perhaps it blossoms into the tomato plant in your backyard that then you eat and digest, so it then gives. Or it blossoms into a beautiful flower that the bee arrives at and pollinates. And again, we see this natural ebb and flow of give and receive. If anything in nature was in a chronic place of giving, it wouldn't be able to produce. We can actually look at that, what we have done with farming in North America at least, and how we have overused our soil. The soil has given and given and given and given. And then the result of that is there aren't nutrients left in the soil. So thankfully, regenerative farming is really helping with that. But you get the idea here. Nature is always in this constant ebb and flow. And by the way, that wouldn't be happening to the soil if humans hadn't come along and said, we're going to ask you to give. And of course, when that occurs, the world becomes sick. The same goes for us. When we have been in a chronic state of self-abandoning, we are in an experience of chronically giving and not receiving. Our physiology, our species is not meant to be in that, and certainly not meant to be in that long term. And so the result is our brilliant soul, our truest self, starts to knock at our door, and it talks to us in the form of resentment. Resentment simply is an indicator of an unmet need. It's my system saying, hey, you need to wake up because you're not getting the things that you really desire and that are necessary in order for you to thrive. And so, by the way, if we're self-abandoning, we are the one that's creating that dynamic in our world. And generally speaking, what can happen is we then find ourselves surrounded by experiences and people who fit into that dynamic with us. So today we're going to talk about a bit more about the origin of it. And then like every episode, we're going to talk about what we can do to begin shifting this. So when we look at babies as they come into the world, as I've said in many other episodes, babies don't have the ability to self-regulate. That means they're entirely reliant on the people around them. So what happens is a baby is really in this pattern of needing to receive rather than giving. And this is really important for a child's development. Now, eventually a child reaches the age where their nervous system begins to fully come online and develop. And now I have the ability for reciprocity. So I can receive and I can begin giving. And we enter into this natural ebb and flow. And the more that we develop, the more that becomes equal on both sides of giving and receiving. But it's very important to know, as a child, it shouldn't actually be equal, meaning a child should not be giving to their caregiver as much as they are receiving. For their development, they really need to be receiving, and of course on the receiving end, and to be focused on. This isn't a child being selfish. This is a natural part of development. And so when we become an adult, if we had this kind of experience, then we're really engaged and connected to this natural inherent process of I give and I receive, because it's what I experienced and it's what was modeled for me and with me. But for many of us, that's not what we got. We got, even when we had loving parents, by the way, we may have gotten messages like, what you're asking is too much. Maybe you're saying like, hey, I really feel like we should be having more connected time on the weekend. Like, I don't know why you don't want to spend time with me, as a young kid. And if we have a parent who can't tolerate the fact that what they're doing is causing us pain, then they might say something to us like, there are kids in the world that don't have food, and there's kids in orphanages, and you're so lucky that you have this home and that you have parents who love you. And what they're doing is deflecting their own affect or feelings around not showing up for you in the way that you need. But what occurs is we internalize that as my needs must be too much. Another example of this is, let's say when you're little, you're working on setting boundaries and someone's over the house and they say, hey, give me a hug. And a child says, no, I don't want to. And then we receive a shaming message of, oh, that hurts my feelings. I just want to love you. So in that moment, I'm told my truth is wrong. And I learn yet again to self-abandon. So I focus less on what I actually need and more on what they need. And I don't set that boundary and I give them their need in order to maintain safety. And the same goes in that first scenario that I named. Other examples, for many of us, we were given the message that having needs was weakness. Like if you go it alone and you figure it out, that's what makes you strong and that's what makes you tough. And so what we begin to do is we fortify against our needs. We tuck them away and don't have access to them and become very comfortable with helping everybody else. For many of us, we were given love or adoration, whether that's in school or at home, when we did help, when we helped our siblings or our caregivers. And so that's what we would then become oriented to as a way to be loved. And then others of us who experienced neglect or abuse, our system did not have access to getting our needs met, either regularly or at all. And so as a result, I might have an overfocus on others. So for all of these reasons, we will find ourselves self-abandoning in our adult lives. And that is always a recipe for resentment building. You cannot get around the fact that you are a human being with needs, right? Just like the tomato plant or the flower, it has needs. And if you deprive yourself of that, it will turn into resentment. Anger is always a reflection of an unmet need underneath it. So there's a lot of information there behind the resentment that we feel. And the reason why it can be so scary in our adult lives to actually lean into having needs and not self-abandoning is because there was a moment in time or many moments in time when we were connected to our needs and we tried in some way to communicate it and we experienced rejection or danger. And so our nervous system says, never again do I want you to experience that. And so we orient to the world in a way where we are self-abandoning as a way to survive. So let's look at how this may show up in our adult lives. In a romantic container, this can look like codependency. So I am overly focused on tending you and caretaking you. And in fact, I actually need you to stay helpless because that's the way that I feel valued and loved. That was the way that I was taught that I was lovable, by my doing. So it's very important actually that that person remains incapable in a lot of ways or needing us to be invisible and it to be focused on them because that's the way that I survived as a kid and that's the way that I got love. And so we might really dislike that dynamic and it turns into resentment, but there's a part of us that's saying, this is what I need in order to be safe. Others of us will find ourselves overgiving in our relationship. So we keep doing and we keep doing and we keep doing. And then we get resentful that that is not being reciprocated. The problem here is we are not asking our partner to meet our needs. When we have younger parts present, it's very common that we are looking for our partner to be the perfect parent, meaning read our mind. And they should be able to figure out what I need. And a lot of people say this to me, if I have to ask, it doesn't count. But the truth is that counts more. Because if you ask and your partner is willing to lean into it, that is an indicator that they deeply care and are invested in supporting you and deeply care about the relationship. But for many of us, we'll expect them to be the perfect parent. Won't ask, and then they won't know how to meet our need, and then resentment builds because of that self-abandonment. And in our friendships, this can look like having experiences that are not mutually reciprocal. meaning you might be the friend that everybody goes to when something's wrong. They turn to you for support, or you're the person they can always rely on. And there is very little happening in the other direction. Now, a part of that might be on us, right? That it's not comfortable for me to ask for help or to talk about myself or to lean on you because historically that wasn't safe. It led to rejection. So we'll find ourselves having these lopsided relationships where I am doing a lot of the meeting of the needs and it's not happening for me. At one point in my life, one of my best friends said to me, we've been friends for like a decade. And early on, she said, Sarah, I'm looking for a relationship where I get to help you too, because I was really oriented towards focusing on her and helping her. And that was a comfort zone for me. But I was chronically self-abandoning. And her lovingly saying that to me was a wonderful wake-up call, really, of the way in which I was self-abandoning and also how uncomfortable it was at first to really lean into taking up space because it's not something that was historically available or safe for me. Now, let's look at work for a second. This is a place where a lot of us self-abandon, in part, of course, because of what happened in our childhood, but also because a lot of workplaces really celebrate the self-abandonment, meaning we can always count on you. You'll always do more. You'll always do more. You'll respond to emails after hours. You'll work on the weekends. You won't say no. You won't ask for a pay raise. And for a company that, an unhealthy company, they're treating you a bit like a robot, right? Taking without giving. And we fit into that dynamic if that's something that has historically in the past what we had to do. So I might find myself feeling like, I don't think I'm being compensated properly, but I don't say anything and I don't do anything about it. Or I really want to set the boundary, but I don't because my fear is I won't be valued, I'll be fired, things won't be okay, someone will be mad at me. So this is a dynamic a lot of us find ourselves in our workplace. And then we can also tend to self-abandon ourselves. And this looks like not nourishing ourselves and making sure that all of our needs are met. I can tell you this is something that I still work on. Here's an example, simple example with my dog. My dog, I don't have human children yet, so my dog just gets the best treatments in the world. He has disc disease in his back, so he gets acupuncture and he gets massages and he gets physical therapy. He does all of these things. And you know what I have to tell you? I am not so great at making sure I do those things for myself regularly. Why? Because historically I experienced a lot of neglect. And it's been I've certainly come a long way with this, but I just want to give some humanity to this so that you understand how common this is. We can do this with our kids, right? Or with our partner. We do all the things for them, but am I doing it for me? And so we actually have to begin tolerating the discomfort of giving ourselves the things that we need and not pushing beyond our capacity. So maybe I could work 2 more hours, but do I want to? And does my body want to? Or instead, do I want to go lay down or go see a friend or whatever? And so our work is to really begin leaning into that with ourselves because a lot of us are self-abandoning in our own lives. And that disconnects us from our creativity, our aliveness, and our vitality. So I want to name some of the long-term results of self-abandonment. One of those is that we begin to experience chronic dysregulation. And again, think about nature, right? I gave you that example of soil and farming and how the more that the soil was taken from, the more it became sick, right? And that's the beauty of regenerative farming that's now happening. It's giving back to the soil. But again, when we are chronically in a state of self-abandonment, we're not getting our needs met, then what happens is we have higher levels of dysregulation. Because we are also internalizing our experience, I'm not able to actually express what's happening, that energy has to go somewhere. And so children who have the ability to fully be expressed, right? They get frustrated and then they get sad and then they get happy and they're just really able to feel their experience and to allow it to come out of themselves. For many of us, that wasn't the case. So if that experience doesn't come out, it becomes internalized. And that's energy. Think of it like getting lodged inside of us. And long term, that dysregulating energy can cause us chronic illness or autoimmune diseases. And that's a real common thing that happens when we're not able to have this mutually reciprocal experience inside of our relationships. And then it also creates resentment. And over time, resentment, it's kind of like a slow poison, like a little bit more, a little bit more. And we get to a place where the relationship not only can't thrive, but it can't work. And so it is vital that we do this work for ourselves, for our relationships, and for the world around us. It's really, really important. And by the way, I want to name this, the more that you come into an experience of reciprocity, or saying, I need reciprocity, like in work, for example, I need this to be mutually reciprocal. What I'm doing is I'm holding that company to a higher standard that it needs to be held to. In my friendships, I'm saying, hey, I actually need to take up space. And that's a gift to the other person to help them to build their capacity to hold space for another. By the way, as I say this a lot, the gift doesn't feel like a gift at first. It starts to feel like a gift the more that we step into or lean into doing this work, but it most certainly is a gift. So let's talk about how we do this. How do we come out of self-abandonment and back into this natural rhythm of ourselves? One way that I find really helpful is using what I call an as-if tool. Because we've self-abandoned for so long, we can feel really disconnected from even knowing what it's like to have a need, because we so reflexively disconnect and then focus on the other. So I want you to think about this. If somebody else I loved was in my situation, what would I want for them? Or maybe even like if I watch a couple that I'm friends with in their relationship, can I tell or see when it doesn't seem reciprocal? How does that make me feel? And what do I want for the other person? So once I have done that externally, which can be much easier to access, then I want to use that same dynamic and put my own circumstance inside of it. So let's say that I notice that I am the one that is cooking dinner every night. And we're both working a lot of hours, and it feels like too much for me. I don't really feel like I want to do this, nor do I have the energy to do it. So I might use an as-if tool and say, if someone I loved was in my shoes, what would I feel for them? And you might say, I'd feel kind of frustrated or angry for them. And what would I want for them? Well, maybe I would want them to have the conversation with their partner, and their partner to either cook 50% of the time or get food somewhere. I don't know where they're going to find food. No, I know they'll find food, Uber Eats or whatever they use to order food from. They'll find food for you. But my point is that you would want your friend to have a mutually reciprocal experience. And that as-if tool can be really helpful to connect into, what is my need actually? The next thing we want to do, or another way to make contact with the unmet need, is connect into that resentment. The resentment is a beautiful clue. And I don't want us to shame ourselves for resentment. I want us to explore it. So name what the resentment is. So it might be, the resentment might be, I don't feel supported by my partner. I believe so deeply in their dreams, and I'm always telling them about how I believe in them, and I'm excited for them, and I support them when they're feeling scared. And I don't feel like they're doing that for me. And I feel really pissed off about it or angry about it. So that's the resentment, right? Then I want to ask myself, okay, what is the need that I am protecting myself from feeling that's actually underneath the resentment? And the need might be, I really need my partner to give me words of affirmation of how they believe in me, because sometimes I struggle to believe in myself. And I really want somebody who's in my corner, who's reminding me of how special I am, or reminding me that I have everything inside of me to do this thing. And they're showing me that they believe in me and care. I really need them to verbally say that to me, because that's what I'm not getting. That connects us to the unmet need. And again, if you just try to ask yourself, what do I need? It can be very elusive and hard to find, but the resentment is always guiding us down a trail to get to the need. The next thing is, I want you to ask yourself, when you're feeling resentment, ask yourself, is there any part of this resentment that feels old? And now in the example I gave about feeling supported, a lot of that, what I just named, sounds like it's coming from adult me. What I want to ask myself is, in that moment that resentment's arising, does it also feel perhaps bigger than the circumstance? It's always a clue that things from the past are being activated if my response doesn't match the circumstance. It feels bigger than what's occurring. The reason I want us to get curious about this is because more often than not, our romantic partnerships, close relationships, is where the past is going to get activated the most. So what I want to do is ask myself, when's the first time I remember feeling this? And so that example that I gave of wanting to feel supported, it might be, you know what? When I was little, I never felt like anyone believed in me. And I was always kept small. And I had these dreams, and they said, oh, you're not going to be able to do that, or that's way too big for you. Or they said, oh, that's not going to work out, or whatever. Or maybe they weren't even there at all. So I want to connect into that younger part that is feeling that resentment and connect to what their need actually is. From that place, we want to do some parts work with that part, because here's the thing. Our parts show up in our romantic relationships, and they will look to our partner to be the perfect parent that rescues them from the past, which is a tall order because there is no perfect parent. And the only one that can do that for them is us. So really teasing apart which part of the resentment is about today and which part of the resentment is about the past. And then connecting to the unmet need of that younger part and beginning to meet that for them. Meaning, the person that needs to believe in them the most is me. I certainly want my partner to have a requirement in it for a relationship. For me would be a partner who deeply believes in me and also believes in my young parts, but I have to be the one that believes in my young parts the most and the parent to them. So that's the work that we really need to do. The next thing is we need to communicate our needs in a tolerable way. Because remember, historically speaking, there was a time where we communicated our needs, and the other side of that communication was rejection or harm. And so we have to build our toleration and show our nervous systems it's actually safe to do this. So it might start by communicating via writing each other notes. I say this a lot, but communicating via text, meaning I'm not in the same space as you, can create more relative safety, or even over the phone. And then it might be we sit down and, a next step might be we sit down and say, here's our time for communicating needs. Maybe we do it once a week and we each share something that we need that's not being met so that it has a container around it. And there's an agreement for how we're going to come into that dynamic. It can feel way too scary to just come in and say, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this thing, and my partner doesn't know I'm going to do this thing. But if I have an agreement that, hey, once a week we sit down and do that, and our agreement is, I am going to meet that need for you. If it feels like it's unattainable, then I'm going to talk to you about what is an attainable goal of a need I can meet. So that's a wonderful way to do it. The other is we have to communicate with clarity. We don't want to communicate a complaint. We want to communicate clearly what we feel and then what the need is and how they can meet it for us. And again, notice when a younger part shows up and says, like, I shouldn't have to ask, or them doing it when I ask doesn't count. It means they don't really care. Use an as if tool there. If you saw somebody else who was asking for a need to be met, and then their partner remembered that, thought about it, and then they showed up and they did the thing, they supported them and said, hey, I just want you to remember I really believe in you. Or they left you a note, they left them a note. You'd think of that and you'd say, oh my gosh, that's so loving and so sweet. But when our partner does it, we can feel like, oh, you're just doing that because I asked. But the truth is, yes, they are doing it because you asked, because they love you and they are different from the past. And when we do these things, we begin to stop self-abandoning in our relationships. And the result of that is we are able to be more deeply seen, more deeply known. We come back into this reciprocity and the natural ebb and flow of give and receive. And then lastly, we want to do this with ourselves. How can I stop self-abandoning with me? And that must look like tolerating the discomfort of giving to ourselves. For many of us, we really struggle with this. How often do I used to do this all the time. I would buy the really nice candle, and then I would never light that damn candle. It would just be sitting in my house. I'm like, wow, I bought this $50 candle. It smells so nice. And I would look at the candle and not light the candle, and then I would dust it off because it's never even lit. And then someone would come over for an hour and I'd light the candle. And then when they leave, I'd go back to lighting toxic candles by myself, right? That's self-abandoning. And so instead, it's like, can I give that to me? Because I deserve that. Can I give myself deep rest? Because I deserve that. Can I take myself to the movies? Because I deserve that. Can I go out in nature today instead of working for another 2 hours? Because I deserve that. And the more we do that, the more we regulate in our systems, and we have an overall experience of well-being, not only with us, but in our relationships too. Not sure where to start with somatic healing? My free quiz, What's Keeping You Stuck, will equip you with a personalized guide and tangible trauma informed tools to help you regulate your nervous system. Check out the link in the show notes to get started. So let's get to the questions that we have for this episode. And just a reminder, if you have questions along the way as you're listening to these episodes, we want you to submit them. We have a link in the show notes to do that. We can take your video questions, audio questions, or written questions. Let's get to the first one that we have today.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for all the work you have been doing. It's a great work. And coming to the question I want to ask, I am, it's very difficult for me to say no or stand up and say that, no, this is hurting me. Mm, because it feels very tricky, when I have to say that, okay, I have certain needs to feel safe or respected or be seen or heard, right? It comes from a slight behavior that they have to do or a certain action that I might expect from the other person. But the tricky part is the person is already going through a lot in their life, and they feel they're giving their 100%, but at the same time that's not enough for me. Because I feel it's very less, and I'm actually self-abandoning myself, and I am clueless on how to take this forward or how to approach this, because I want to understand that the person, but inside I'm losing it for myself.
So, when we've been oriented towards self abandoning, and especially with codependency, we can be oriented towards being someone's savior. And I don't mean that from a place of like, wow, I'm my high horse, I think I'm so great, but from the place of that's my duty or job, and that someone is not going to be okay if I don't rescue them. And the truth of the matter is, when we are in that place of rescuing another, we are really supporting them to continue the experience of being helpless in their lives. And that is enablement. And so when someone, I have had friends come to me and they've got a lot going on, and I might say to them, I love you so much. And I wish that I could get on the phone tonight and talk about this thing with you, but I really don't have anything left in me today. I'm so exhausted. Can we talk about it tomorrow or this weekend? And my job is to trust from my adult self that they are inherently powerful and also have agency, meaning they could go talk to a therapist if they have it. They could listen to a podcast like this. They could call another friend, that I am not the only person in their lives, nor am I their rescuer. And that is so very important, because when I do that relationally with someone who's safe, by the way, at first with somebody who's not used to that, that might be a little challenging for them. But the goal is that the more that we are able to fully express ourselves in that way, that other person can then go begin to do the work that they need to do to self-regulate and also have other resources besides just us. No relationship can thrive if we, including a romantic one, if we are the person's only other. That suffocates the relationship. So that's really important. And I just want to also name an important component of this is addressing our younger parts, and the part of us that feels like they're going to be left or abandoned or harmed or hurt in some way if they actually say no. So the more that I comfort that younger part and from adult me communicate this, the more effective I will be able to be. Another thing that can be really helpful if you're with a safe person is to let them behind the curtain and say, you know what, this is really scary for me. And I'm noticing parts of me that feel like you might go away. I did this with some friends. I feel like you might go away if I do this. And that's really scary, but I also really want to work on not self-abandoning and showing up authentically with you. And if you are in relationship with someone who's safe, they're really going to honor that for us. And the more that we do this, the closer the relationship becomes, because now I'm being fully seen and known. Let's get to the next question that we have.
Hi, Sarah. I would really love to hear your perspective on how can we possibly find place for self care, and this is something with what I struggle a lot in times of high stressful periods of our lives, when there are just some life circumstances when we just need to be on a constant go to earn money to get through lives, etc. And I feel that there is a huge part of me that would love to rest and self-care and somehow nourish myself, but there is just I can't find any time and place and resources for that. Thank you a lot.
Well, I want to name that there is a very real thing in our world of being expected to produce so much, to be pushed beyond the capacity of our nervous system. So for many of us, we're working so many hours, and then you have a commute, an hour each way. Now that means that's like 10 hours that I'm gone. Then I have to grocery shop, then I have to cook dinner, then I have to put the kids to bed. And it feels like there isn't a lot of time. Not only does it feel like that, there isn't. So I want to acknowledge that. So our work is not to say like, yeah, I'm going to, be somebody who works part-time. That's not going to be possible. But what we can do is inject moments where we are self-giving and we are not self-abandoning. And literally that could look like 5 minutes. If I get up 5 minutes earlier and I just put my hand on my chest and I spend 5 minutes breathing and meditating and nourishing me, that can go a long way if we consistently and continually do these things throughout the day. Like I'm going to go feel the sun on my face and just breathe. I'm going to take 10 minutes and I'm going to lay with my back on the floor and let my fascia and my muscles release and be held by the earth. These seemingly small steps, when we do them enough, we're building capacity in our nervous system to not self-abandon. And what you'll start to notice is there's actually a lot more time. When we're oriented towards self-abandonment, we're going to be oriented towards everyone else and getting everything else done as a way of survival. The more we regulate and the more we build our capacity for this, the more spaciousness there is around tending ourselves. Like sometimes I'm not kidding, I actually do this. I did this actually when I got here this morning to film. It's kind of cold here this morning, and I have seat heaters on my car. I love them so much because I'm somebody who was always cold. And so I don't know if I really did have 5 minutes or not, but I actually took 5 minutes and I just sat and enjoyed the heat on my seat heater. That's simple. And, I could have easily bypassed that and said, I don't need to do that. It's not really that important. But it was important. It was nourishing me. And the more that we listen to that internal rhythm and that internal knowingness, and we give ourselves the need that we have, we meet the need, the more nourished we become, the more regulated we become, which means the more we can serve other people in our lives too. So it doesn't have to be this enormous thing where you do all-day spa day. It can literally start with the example that I gave. So let's go to the next question that we have.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Katie. Feeling really stuck in my career and wondering if you can provide some insight. Trying to break the cycle of poverty that I grew up in. I kind of joined the hustle culture and put myself through university and grad school and worked really hard to climb the ladder and get a stable career. Now that I'm a mother of 2 young children, I'm being really pushed mentally and physically to slow down and kind of get out of that hustle culture so I can be there for my family. Wondering how to reconcile these what feels like two competing parts of myself. Thank you.
The first thing that I want you to do is I want you to get to know this beautiful protector part of you. That's your doer part. And that part of you said, never again. I am going to ensure that I never have to worry about not having food. I have a part that did this. I will never have to be hungry again. I will never be in a situation where I'm worried about not having a home. I'm never going to be worried about not having clothes to put on my body or whatever. I'm not going to have that happen to me. And that doer part of you, look what they did. It's miraculous. You put yourself through college. You got yourself into, it sounds like a really fabulous career where you're making good money doing it. And that part rescued you from that experience. So get to know who they are. Like, I really mean that. Get to know them. Thank them for all the work they've done. The thing is, that part doesn't know that they can stop doing their job. I know that because you're saying you're still stuck in that dynamic. And that means that that part is still going. What that part needs is the mother that you are to your 2 children, that wonderful you who is saying, I so want to be deeply connected to my kids. And so I want you to anchor into that mother you, who you are, the power within you. And from that place, say hello to this protector part. let her know or them know that, hey, I'm here now. And I promise you that I will take care of you, the kids, everything, and ensure that never happens again. And if I need your help, I can call right on you. And also, by the way, we want to let that part have a new job, meaning that part of you likely didn't get to have the whole experience of childhood they deserved. The beautiful thing about having children is we get to re-experience that through our children. So letting that part have a role in the family where she can be free and playful and joyful and do the things that she never got to do, like the hobbies she wasn't able to do, and experience pleasure and playfulness and all of that stuff. That's really vital. And the only way that we can come out of that dynamic is by, again, getting to know that protective part and then taking the role over of protector as adult us. And when that happens, the part starts to trust us. Oh, maybe this is safe, and relinquishes their control. And then we want to, bit by bit, just strategically in our lives, begin shifting out of that hustle culture and out of overgiving and overworking. And just know, as you say, like, hey, I'm going to set this boundary at work and say, like, I actually need to work 30 hours a week. Is that something that's possible? That it's adult you communicating that. Because if you try to communicate that from that protective part, they're just going to come in and say, oh, no, I can do it. So really anchoring in our adult selves. And then what we'll see is, a lot of the time when we communicate that unmet need that feels very scary to communicate, it's actually met. And they might say, hey, yeah, we can work that out, and so on and so forth. So parts work is really vital here. So again, we all have a natural inherent need to not only support others, but to be supported. When we come back into this reciprocity in our lives, our relationships thrive, and we thrive in our bodies too. Enjoyed this episode and want to go even deeper into somatic healing? You can join my email community for free weekly teachings, more resources, and live events. Sign up using the link in the description.